Everyone despised him, but he came back unexpectedly. Now, everything would change. If this story has affected you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. As soon as Sarah Mitchell walked into Stormp's glass-walled meeting room, the mood in the room changed in an instant. It was as if the electricity had been cut off. Every glance stuck to him. He had a simple file in his hand, which he had carefully held. Worn, comfortable flat slippers on his feet, a simple bun on his head. From the outside, she was no more than an ordinary woman. But there was power in every step of the way. As he walked to the front, he knew that everything was more than the looks and sarcastic smiles that excluded him. Human Resources Director Rachel Anderson looked at her suspiciously as she raised her eyebrows and whispered in a way that made her voice heard. "Did you get that outfit from the Lost Stuff box?" There was a small smile that spread throughout the room, along with a wry look. Rachel and the others were people who always measured success by appearances, blessing successes on the surface. Sarah walked away, not knowing what to remind them of when she stepped inside. Sarah stopped, feeling everyone's eyes glued to her, but without breaking her calm. His eyes were patient, but determined. He looked at the file in his hand and lowered his head slightly. They didn't know who Stormp's creative force was. Someone wouldn't have been able to fully appreciate the determination and strategy behind the company getting to this point. But she knew that Nathan Blake, Sarah's husband, had built the company from the ground up. And she was not an ordinary woman, but the creator of years of struggle and intelligence. Stormp soared like a gigantic plank of Silicon Valley, a tech empire made of steel and glass that felt like it would encompass everything around it. This massive 50-story building was symbolized not only by high technology, but also by power and control. The interview room on the 40th floor was the company's headquarters. A tall mahogany table and large glass windows surrounded the room in the background, complete with impressive views of the valley. But Sarah was a stranger in that room. At that moment, James Foster, the company's most seasoned executive, looked at Sarah as if impressed by Rachel's gaze, coldly declaring, "It's a very different application." Another laugh echoed. Sarah was indifferent to these smiles and sneers. There was a revolutionary mind in it. At that moment, people saw only an ordinary woman, dressed in cheap fabrics. But Sarah had the intelligence to revolutionize the world of software. Each step was a solid step toward success. In that meeting room, they didn't realize what a woman could really do. But Sarah was strong enough to destroy everything they saw. Behind the appearance of the ordinary, he carried a mind full of strategies that would shake up an empire. The panel of 5 sitting in the meeting room seemed united in their disdain for Sarah. Rachel Anderson sat at the head of the table like a leader in a red jacket, surrounded by CEO James Foster, who is known for his wealth, and several executives. Each of them, in turn, began to question Sarah, as if it was a mistake for her to come here. His eyes were filled with a sneer that questioned not only his appearance, but his background, education, and experience. Rachel harshly expressed her attitude towards Sarah, asking, 8 years of developing software. So, how do you think this could propel Stormp forward? This company expects more from ordinary developers. Sarah turned her eyes to Rachel, who was shabbily dressed but confident. My last venture tripled my income. I can fix software issues that Stormp can't. I'm here because I have a solution that I can give to the biggest tech companies in the world, he said, the calmness in his voice adding to the tension in the room. But in the face of it, there were only mocking laughs. Samantha Parker asked loudly and brutally, "Did you study sociology? This is not a book club. It takes a lot more than software to succeed here." Ben Morris displayed his usual haughty smile and added, "Maybe you'll work in retail. We're doing really big things here, not for people like you." Daniel Davis blinked and laughed. Nobody would believe that. What do you really contribute to Stormp? These became Sarah's official title. They not only insulted him, but also tried to destroy his professional career. There was not the slightest respect in them. But Sarah was patiently waiting for the moment to take them all down one by one. Despite the sarcasm that pervaded the room, there was a resistance in Sarah's eyes. This moment was, in fact, a beginning. Around the room, holding his head high, he calmly but resolutely glanced over each of them. These mocking glances strengthened his composure even more. He felt like someone who had been trained to deal with such situations for years. He was patient, but he also knew exactly what to do with his every move. The more they insulted him, the sharper the details of his plan became. He could notice the weaknesses behind each of them, how narrow a world they had in their minds. The storm, which filled the room led by Rachel with Sarah's words, was met with a moment's silence. Each of them blessed a success based solely on his appearance, while Sarah, with true wit and strategy, was determined to outsmart them. That was the moment it all began. As the taunts grew louder with each passing second, Samantha Parker began tearing up the papers in front of Sarah, one by one. As each piece of paper swirled in the air, the laughter that fell on the table grew sharper in an attempt to hurt Sarah's dignity. Rachel and the others were competing. They were all doing their best to test Sarah's stamina. However, no matter what their goals were, Sarah's mere calm kept them turning these taunts into an even greater force. Tyler Hensley, taking advantage of a moment of distraction, accidentally spilled the water on the table. The water quickly trickled in front of Sarah, but Tyler added with a wry laugh, "Keep dreaming," as if to emphasize that her dreams and goals were nonsense. Sarah, however, did not react in any way. His face, in contrast to the water and the mockery, on the contrary, had become calmer. His eyes lit up for a moment, but it was just a reflection of his inner strength. Their reaction was subtle enough to silence their defense. Sarah just stood there coolly, as if aware of everything but indifferent to these humiliating games. At this time, the sarcastic looks and laughter became even more intense. James Foster, shaking his head, asked, "Do you think you can do that?" But he was not at all impressed, because Sarah knew that the real problem was not what they could see, but what they didn't understand. Falling papers, waters, mockery, they were all leading to him. As they fell, Sarah rose higher. The strength within him seemed to explode after a moment of silence. This was the moment to be one step ahead of their regiment. Sarah picked up the wet papers from the floor. The papers between his hands were still wet and torn, but he gently put them together and tidied them up. As water stains covered the papers, the effect of the mocking glances in the room became more and more intense. He slowly stood up, silently facing the marks left by the water, holding the papers together, and began to move away from the edge of the table. For a moment, the eyes of everyone in the room were on him. Sarah, however, did not speed up by any means. The mocking glances tried to drive him into a moment of despair, but he moved forward with calm steps, as if nothing had happened. The trace left by the water stains, every drop leaked by the wet papers, left a trace behind. Sarah, ignoring the mocking looks, decided to leave the room. Taking a step, the emotions that ran through him as he left the room were filled with only strength and determination. Amid mocking laughter, he opened the door to the room and let the cold air that came in leave behind the trail of water and papers. He didn't look back. He left it up to them. That was just the beginning. As he walked out of the room, he knew one thing clearly. As long as they despised him, he would always be one step ahead of them. A day later, an emergency meeting email was sent for the meeting that Storm's board members were waiting for. Everyone in the room, pretending to forget the previous day's processions, was waiting for Elias Storm, while a great wind of change was preparing to blow in that room. Elias Storm came in at the right time. Her expressive presence instantly palpable all the tension in the room. Next to him was Sarah Mitchell, who had been ridiculed yesterday. The old blouse Sarah was wearing was stained with traces of yesterday's events. However, his eyes still glowed with the same determined gaze. At every step, in every area he passed, it was clear that the ridicule and contempt actually gave him strength. Elias walked over to the table, not blinking for a moment to anyone in the room. Elias Storm entered the room with only silent fury, his eyes sharply focused on all the executives in the room like an arrow. A deep silence spread through the room for a few seconds before he began to speak. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "Your task was to correctly evaluate the candidates in the interests of this company. But yesterday, you insulted a woman." Elias continued, sharpening his every word like a sword, looking into the eyes of the panel members one by one. "And not just any woman. You despise this woman, my wife. I can never accept that." At that moment, there was a deep, deathly silence in the room. Everyone was frozen in place, bowing their heads. Not a breath, not a sound. Only the echoes of Elias Storm's anger roamed the room. Sarah stood quietly behind Elias, but there was meaning in every look. He looked at all the panel members in the room with his eyes, as if he was going to evaluate them one by one. Each of them, without realizing it, was now standing only in front of his eyes. Elias gave each member of the panel a cold glance one last time before leaving the room. The values of this company are based on the dignity of everyone here. And if these values are not met, then I will do what is necessary without wasting any time. As Elias Storm looked at each member of the panel one by one with a flame in his eyes, his anger growing with each passing second. Silence enveloped the room. Everyone did not know what to do or say. Elias, looking into the eyes of each of them, raised his voice hard and sharply. Repeat now what you said yesterday. I'll hear what you say once again. The tone of Elias' anger changed the whole mood in the room. Everyone took a step back, remembering those sarcastic words they had said in the past. Elias' voice echoed through the walls of the room. You underestimated Sarah's software. He built the heart of Storm, but you just underestimated him. His every word struck every panel member in the room. Elias continued, emphasizing his every word. Now, you will lose everything that you have been in charge of. At that moment, there was tension in the room. Everyone's eyes were filled with the weight of Elias' words. Gregory, Tyler, and the other executives began to stare at each other with fear and surprise in their eyes. They felt that everything that had once given them their high status and power was now about to slip away from them. This woman, whom they had ridiculed and despised the day before, had now become the representative of justice. Sarah stood quietly in the room, but her eyes were determined and strong. With a single glance at them, he was showing all his strength. That look carried the patience within him and the strength of the years he had accumulated. Now, there was nothing to stand in the way of it. In the wake of Elias' anger, the harsh reality of the business world was beginning. All that was left was the fall. Gregory, Tyler, and the others slowly walked out of the room, feeling the moment they had been dismissed from their duties. Their fame, their fortune, and everything they once owned was disappearing. Because they despised Sarah, they had lost everything. Sarah watched everything they left behind as they left the room. The woman they once thought they couldn't beat now owned everything. When all was gone, Sarah just stopped and stared. But that look wasn't just a woman's revenge. It was a symbol of strength and justice. If this story has affected you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video.